The British people have spoken, and the answer is we're out.
My name is Michael Squeamish. I've written on the relationship between Britain and Europe for over 30 years. Since I was a small child, I've been fascinated by the United Kingdom's relationship with Europe. In this program, I'll be taking you on a remarkable historical and political journey. Thank you, Brenda. I'll examine the history of the European Union and the 2016 referendum result, which saw Britain make a decisive break with Brussels. I'll also be interviewing people involved in the campaign, both politicians and ordinary Joes. No, that's not what I ordered. Could you tell Cecil? Yes.
Fantastic opportunity to take back control.
Misery and difficulty and challenge.
Take back control.
It's awful.
Taking back control.
Feels crazy, honestly, if I think about it, it feels crazy.
Give us back control.
An act of calamitous self-harm.
Take back control.
Let June the 23rd go down in our history as our Independence Day.
There is no one who is going to be able to negotiate the right deal for Britain.
When one looks at Brexit, what strikes one very strongly is how much it divided the British people and how heated the debate became. And it often seemed, and still seems, to be a conundrum which has yet to be resolved. European unity had been tried before, often with mixed results. So in the 1960s, barely 20 years after the end of the Second World War, the relationship between Britain and Europe was still ambivalent.
You talk like Marlene Dietrich, and you dance like Zizi Jeanmaire.
British people rarely ventured there. Holidays were usually taken at home, where facilities were often very basic.
Because we used to go to London Bridge about 2 o'clock in the morning and get out the train about 4, I didn't mean the dark, with just an old cart and all your bedding on top of that. And our bed.
People regarded Europeans as rather exotic types. They ate different food. They wore funny clothes. People in general knew very little about Europe. For many, it was a complete mystery.
Tell me, would you say you knew a great deal about Europe?
No, not a great deal.
Whereabouts is it, do you know?
Can't remember.
Have you heard of France?
No.
Germany?
No.
How about you then? Have you heard of Spain, for instance?
No.
Italy?
No.
Okay. Have you heard of any countries at all?
Oh, yes.
Which ones?
Oh, no, I don't.
No. You?
You caught us off guard.
And that's for Europeans. They rarely came to Britain. It was unusual to see any at all. And when they did hop over the channel, they often got a hostile reception.
Fuck off! Go back to Europe! We're back to France, we're back to Europe, you Why don't you go back to Europe?
But all that was about to change for the better.
I really do appreciate you, Sil.
Well, just to show your appreciation, will you sing a song with me?
Do you know, I was hoping you'd say that even last week, but I'd love to. We seem like passing strangers now.
Priscilla Black and Cliff Richard were both highly paid entertainers at the time, and in fact they were some of the very few people in Britain who'd ever been abroad. They loved the food and the wine and the arts and the culture and all that, and that had a big influence on Ted Heath's decision to take us into the EEC, as it then was. And everyone knew that Ted was always a bit of a Europhile, and even in the 1950s he campaigned to sort of vigorously have closer integration with Europe. And that really left us in a...
Hold on a second. Oh, oh no, it's gone. The European Economic Community was formed by the Treaty of Rome in 1957. Strangely enough, it wasn't originally about economic integration at all. In the beginning, it was actually a chess club where people would just play chess to relax. And it grew from that into a very powerful economic group that made no bones about the fact that they wanted to rule Europe. You had people like Heinz Schlock and the former Olympic wrestler, Doris Mendeschnink. Both were very prominent in that movement. They were big personalities who wanted a project to match their ambition. And it became very successful. You think of successful continents of the world in the 1960s, and Europe is easily amongst the top 5. In the early 70s, Britain was in turmoil. It was the time of the miners' strike, 3-day working weeks. Everything was in shitty total chaos. Very few people had any respect for politicians. For a short period, the England football manager, Don Revie, was also Foreign Secretary.
She's my woman of gold, she's not very young.
And that's when many believed the rot really began to set in. So, Britain by the early 1970s wanted a part of the action.
In the autumn, Parliament will be asked to decide whether Britain should join the European Community, the common market. Let's be very clear about it. This is a moment of decision that will not occur again for a very long time, if ever.
So in 1973, Britain was in. While many benefited under the EEC, some argued that a wealthy Britain shouldn't have to subsidize our less successful continental neighbors. Others found some of the new legislation introduced by the EU from its headquarters in Brussels restricting, autocratic, and often hard to comprehend.
Article 3166 sets out specific measures in the agricultural sector to remedy the difficulties caused by the unique situation facing the Union's outermost regions. In order to adhere to this policy, the products, raw materials and the animal feed used must come essentially from mountain areas, while for processed products, production should generally take place in upland regions, but not near forests or within 2 kilometers of a river. What do you think about that?
I don't know, really. We just play rock and roll.
Clearly, the new relationship between the United Kingdom and Europe was not going entirely smoothly. Many British businesses began to dislike increasing interference from Brussels. Just after we joined the EEC, a man from Brussels was sent around every business in the UK with all these new directives. It was common for these bureaucrats from Brussels to bring their own food and cook it in Britain. And that didn't go down very well with the British people.
They're not clean, and the smell of the cooking makes you feel sick.
As the years passed, disillusionment with the European experiment began to grow. So tell me, what was life like in Britain under the EEC?
Oof. There's nothing to do.
Not do.
Nothing to do.
Not to do.
Nothing.
Nothing
to do throughout
Nothing
the
to do.
whole country.
Nothing.
Nothing to do.
Nothing to do.
Nothing to do. Nothing.
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 Absolutely nothing.
So there was nothing to do. The turning point in Britain's disillusionment with Europe came in 1996, when England lost to Germany in the Euro 96 semi-final. It was the European Championships. Other countries were clearly in competition with England, and many would stop at nothing to prevent England getting to the final. And that was the year of football's coming home. Fellas, was that a goal?
I remember the 1966 World Cup. They didn't want us to win then either. French, the Uruguayans, the Mexicans, the Argentinians, doing their best to stop us. And we'd helped them out in the war, except the Uruguayans, the Mexicans, and the Argentinians. They weren't involved, were they, in the war?
No, them was just countries what was made up for World Cup. That's right, innit?
Not exactly. There were other telltale signs. Many believed that European countries were also ganging up together to make sure Britain never won the Eurovision Song Contest.
The voting was clearly rigged to make sure Britain never won.
But hang on, Britain did win. Cliff, Bucks Fizz, Brotherhood of Man.
I mean, I never really liked Brotherhood of Man. I mean, even the name sounds pro-European. If Anna Soubry, Chuck Ullman, Sarah Wollaston and Gavin Shuker formed a band, you know, it would be
Brotherhood of Man.
Brotherhood of Man.
10 years ago, I did some reports for a BBC Three programme which doesn't exist anymore. I went to North, to towns like Burnley and Middlesbrough, places which under Labour leaders like Tony Blair and Gordon Brown had literally disappeared off the map. The people I spoke to were angry. Another man, a former rock musician, recounted his experience with immigrants.
I've no argument with them on an individual level. Look at me. I am the son of immigrants. My dad was the son of immigrants. My mum was the son of immigrants. I was in a rock band. I was in the police, right? And that were a successful group. But there was no room for the kind of stuff that we were doing back then in the 80s. Because those people, they came over here and they took over the scene overnight. And suddenly it was all grunge, hardcore and garage. Try explaining that to the people who fought Hitler.
Which one were you in the police?
What?
They were a favourite band of mine in the 1980s. I'd have remembered you. Which? Disillusion amongst a large section of society seen as traditionally Labour became evident. Just how was it planning to tackle immigration? Cameron's Conservatives had failed to make progress and allay the fears of its own members. In 2013, the then Prime Minister pledged to allow just 36 migrants into the UK that year. In reality, almost 20 million came in. Nigel Farage's UKIP were quick to point out how social services, schools and hospitals were straining under the crisis.
Do you want me to do the school run, Jemima?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. That'd be great.
Okay.
But on the other side of the argument, feelings among the so-called liberal elite ran equally high. Do you think there should be limits on immigration?
No, I think Britain's big enough to house more immigration.
How much, just to have an exact figure?
I'd say about half the world's population could fit into Britain and we probably wouldn't notice a difference.
It's never been tried.
Yeah, I mean, what do I do when I'm on a crowded tube and I'm getting a bit crushed? I simply turn to the man or woman or transgender person who's crushing me and I say, would you mind moving over a bit? And then he or she or the transgender person moves and it's a bit uncomfortable, but, you know, we usually get home fine and safely, you know?
Earlier today, I was badly beaten up by...
Don't say immigrants.
It wasn't immigrants.
Good.
It was a pony stampede.
If it was a pony stampede, you can't say that you were beaten up by ponies.
Sure you don't think they were responsible?
Yeah.
The ponies?
No, actually, I was responsible. They were on the far side of the street, and I crossed the road and ran in between them.
Were they stampeding before you ran in between them?
No, I caused the stampede. The ponies went berserk and ran in all directions.
Well, there you have it, really. You know, people who complain about immigrants, they're usually the cause of the problems they associate with it.
Yeah.
One last question. I noticed a huge cage, a mini zoo with a rope swing outside. Would you consider housing asylum seekers here in your own home? Hoof print. In 2015, Labour leader Ed Miliband ate a bacon sandwich which cost him the election. He was replaced by rank outsider Jeremy Corbyn.
Good morning, how nice to see you.
The fact now became clear that Labour was out of step with popular opinion. Jeremy Corbyn was well known for saying nice things about immigrants.
Absolutely brilliant, fantastic. It is perfectly normal. What's not to like about all of that?
This was not the kind of thing which would go down well with the electorate. at least 80% of whom, according to a poll carried out by the BBC's Newsnight programme in February 2016, were out-and-out racists. It was not uncommon to see headlines like this. By 2015, pressure was on Britain's Conservative Prime Minister, David Cameron, to hold a referendum on Britain's membership of the EU.
I will go to Parliament and propose that the British people decide our future in Europe through an in-out referendum on Thursday, the 23rd of June.
The subsequent campaign between Remainers and Brexiteers would be the bloodiest battle in British politics since the War of the Roses.
I was in favour of Brexit, so I was very glad when they said there was going to be a referendum, but it did completely split the Conservative Party. And the Labour had difficulty too, and the public knew that.
Were there any differences in the Labour Party over the Brexit referendum?
Were there differences in the Labour Party over the Brexit referendum?
Yes, were there any differences in the Labour Party over the Brexit referendum?
Very much so, and it was a huge challenge for us. We always knew Jeremy was against Europe, but the policy of the party was to campaign for a Remain vote. It was always going to be a real test of his leadership.
In the run-up to the referendum, Alan Johnson had to take the place of the indisposed Labour leader at the Remain rally in Oldham.
Jeremy said he couldn't do it because he was washing his hair. He literally said he was washing his hair.
Corbyn did, however, make it to the next Remain rally in Oxford, along with Johnson.
We were all in a car park. Alan Johnson said a few words beforehand, then introduced Jeremy. Everybody could tell immediately Jeremy wasn't that bothered. He licked a chalk ice for the first minute he was talking.
Was it a Magnum? Meanwhile, the Tory party was beginning to split into pro- and anti-Brexit factions.
The MPs in the Commons were against Brexit, but the membership wanted to leave, so Boris said he wanted to go.
Boris Johnson, along with Michael Gove and Duncan Smith, Nigel Farage, Jacob Rees-Mogg, Liam Fox and Damien Lewis had all been together at Eton College. There, as a part of a school project, they all, apart from Damien Lewis, schemed together to come up with a new Britain, a Britain that would physically no longer be part of Europe. It would relocate somewhere in the middle of the Indian Ocean, and everyone living there would have servants, wear safari suits and speak like the late Brian Sewell.
But I mean, all you have to do to continue the species is fuck. It's as simple as that.
Although the school project only got 1 mark out of 10, 35 years later the scheme was ripe for revival.
Hi there, nice to see you.
But would such an obvious boys' club appeal to voters in a Britain where women had had the vote since the Second World War? The plotters were keen to have a woman on board to give their project a bit of glamour. And they didn't get much more glamorous than Home Secretary Theresa May.
The Home Secretary said she was to remain, but didn't really campaign for it. And the feeling was that really she wanted a Cameron defeat so that she could get the top job.
Theresa May had come from a typical Conservative background in rural Oxfordshire. When people think of the Tory party, they often imagine Churchill, fox hunting, cricket on the village green, the stock market, the charge of the Light Brigade, Adam Ant, Sir Norman Tebbit. It's often dictated by what stock footage is available, and I would say that Adam Ant shouldn't really have been in that montage you've just seen. He's a Lib Dem.
So am I. Jeremy was also occasionally referring to a note that he'd tucked into his beard, which he would look at when he ran out of things to say. Afterwards, he put it in a nearby bin, and I retrieved it. It just had one word written on it. Remain. It was like he was reminding himself, which side of the debate he was on.
Things got even worse when the Labour leader addressed another meeting in Brighton a week later.
He spoke for 2 minutes. It was his longest speech of the campaign. He was pleased and he got a warm reception. The only problem was, though, that it was a Leave rally.
On the night of the election count, I was watching an old Paul Daniels magic show on the television, when suddenly my wife rushed in and said, "Turn on the BBC."
Well, at 20 minutes to 5, we can now say the decision taken in 1975 by this country to join the common market has been reversed by this referendum to leave the EU.
I wasn't expecting it.
Neither was I. This was literally a bombshell.
Then it became very clear that Cameron had to go.
Then it became very clear that Cameron would have to go. Gone. For Remainers, the result meant
horror,
shock, disbelief,
utter despair,
and utter despair.
I mean, we couldn't believe it, could we?
I mean, it scraped through by about, what was it, 4 votes?
I think that if something scrapes through by 4 votes, it's the same as saying that that's actually less than a majority. So what we have here is a minority dictating terms to a majority.
That's not democracy.
Our childminder is from Spain. What's going to happen to her?
Yeah.
It's actually quite a difficult thing to talk about because she's actually had a child by Rob, so she may be able to stay in the country.
Or I could move to Spain.
I don't think I'm in a good way.
It's a difficult time.
But for the pro-Brexit side, ecstasy, jubilation, joy, and a feeling of utter exhilaration. The result of the referendum was to usher in profound changes on the British political stage. In particular, the Conservative Party were entering a period of turmoil. Shortly after the referendum, I was watching a documentary about men in a factory looking at string unraveling when my wife came in and said, "Turn on the BBC." Theresa May, despite not even putting herself up for election, woke up one morning to find that she was the first female Prime Minister of Britain. And the new Premier now had the onerous task of extracting the United Kingdom from Europe. Is any of that true? Weakened further by a disastrous decision to call a general election which left her heading a government with a reduced majority, she was forced to rely on the support of Northern Ireland's Democratic Unionist Party. Their leader, Arlene Foster, immediately hot-footed it to Westminster. Theresa May was an intensely shy woman who had never spoken to another human being until she went to Oxford University. But she was now under intense scrutiny from the media. The decision to leave the EU would be anything but plain sailing. May now entered a series of long drawn-out negotiations with EU representatives, but eventually a settlement was reached. A settlement that failed to appease many Remainers and Brexiteers. The Prime Minister then had the difficult job of selling her deal to a divided Parliament and British public. She went on a whistle-stop tour of the country and appeared on many TV and radio programmes. She was often heavily criticised.
Michael, what would you like to ask the Prime Minister?
You're a very poor dancer, I think. Very bad coordination. I actually met you once because I bought a shed from you.
Go on.
You put a small ad in the paper, and then there was still a wheelbarrow in the shed, which I bought from you. And you said I had to take it because it came with the shed.
This was a negotiation about what we legally owe.
But I had my own wheelbarrow, and I didn't want another one. And I thought then, well, you know, I can't trust this woman. I hope she doesn't ever become Prime Minister.
Thank you very, very much. You've been listening to and watching the BBC News channel.
When her deal was predictably defeated in Parliament, May went back and forth and back to Europe to try and renegotiate. This may have added points to her British Airways loyalty card, But her efforts seemed more and more desperate. At one point, she even offered to play a game of mini snooker with some random continentals to decide Britain's future. Even this went tits up, as the Prime Minister had never actually played mini snooker before in her life. Even her closest friends, allies, and immediate family had to admit that she really was completely hopeless. Some disaffected Labour and Tory MPs founded the independent group. Amongst the first to join were Britain's 1976 Eurovision representatives, Brotherhood of Man.
Kisses for me, save all your kisses for me. Bye-bye, baby, bye-bye.
After the no vote, Britain faced an uncertain future. Intense negotiations lay ahead, the results of which would define our relationship with Europe for generations.
Kisses for me, save all your kisses for me. So long, honey, so long. Hang on, baby, hang on. Don't you dare me to stay, 'cause you know I'll have to say.
People from the UK may no longer be allowed to legally visit the flesh pots of Amsterdam and Paris. But to many, that price is well worth paying. But it is both ancient and modern memories of a common European history, binding countries together through shared values of democracy and the bitter memories of 3 world wars, which could mean that the dream of an independent Britain unconnected to Europe may never actually come true.
We'll meet again.
Keeping it light, all the gossip from Westminster and Brussels in the Brexit cast from BBC Sounds. Download the app now. And he'll tell it like it is at the end of an eventful week. Frankie Boyle's New World Order, the new series, Friday at 10, here on BBC Two.
Oh no, more ponies.